So it's quite a historic day today in Australian politics. Something I didn't see coming. Well, maybe I did. Maybe the writing was on the wall. But the LNP, they've broken up. The Libs and the Nats. They've decided it's not working out anymore. They think it would be better for the kids if they stopped fighting at home in front of the kids. So they've decided to call it a day, ending an 80-year relationship. I got a new mic. Yeah, I got a new mic. And I've actually taken a lot of comments from people to heart that I'm going to implement. Like, I'm going to get an ad blocker extension. I didn't have time to do that today, so I'm going to get on that. So hopefully no more ads in my videos. That will be good. Yeah, so new mic. It's a Yeti, apparently. I'm speaking into a hairy Tibetan snowman, but here we are. Here we are. Yeah, so Lib Nats have split, and as we know, the Nats typically, the Libs typically cannot form government in their own right. So, what does this mean? Possibly a more robust crossbench, but also looks pretty promising for Labor to be able to form majority governments from here on out. So yeah, let's just see what the good old Australian Broadcasting Corporation, old auntie herself, what does she have to say on the matter?
Here today. Since the devastating defeat and my re-election as leader of the National Party and Susan Lee, the leader of the Liberal Party, we have set out on a journey of trying to reshape a coalition agreement. Now, I want to make it clear from the start and the outset, we've done that at the pace of Susan Lee, taking into account and respecting the personal circumstances that she's found herself in. So much so that I made myself available to go to Albury when she wanted to initiate those discussions. Rather than making her come to Canberra, I took the decision to drive to Albury and to start those negotiations.
He's tearing up. It's like he's actually leaving his wife for real. His wife who changed her name to have two S's in it because numerology said she would have a better life if Susan was spelt with two S's. This is the woman that he's leaving. He's very, very sad. He's very, very sad.
Negotiations when she was ready. And then obviously after the sad passing of her mother, we made it very clear we didn't need to enter.
Oh, I didn't know her mum died. Apologies, Susan. That's actually really sad. I'm really sorry to hear her mum died. That's actually awful.
Into further discussions until she was ready, and that she was at a juncture where she had comfort. And my thoughts are still with Susan and her family for the loss of Susan's mother, and it's important that was respected all the way through. This morning, after the discussions that both Susan Lay and I have had over the ensuing period, our party room has got to a position where we will not be re-entering a coalition agreement with the Liberal Party after this election. What we have got to a position is that the National Party will sit alone on a principled basis, on the basis of looking forward, not having to look back and to try and actually regain important policy pieces that change the lives of the people we represent. It's on a principled position of making sure that those hard-fought wins are maintained and respected, and we continue to look forward. We look forward to what else we can do as a party and as part of an opposition now that can shape the lives of regional Australians for the better. And those.
Yeah, well, I think with the coalition, people living in rural areas have always got the short end of the stick. I don't really think that, the Nats really had the bargaining power in that relationship. Obviously, the Libs have their own, neo-lib, neocon agenda, and what that has to do with farmers and people that have the issues that come from extreme isolation face. Like, I don't think those were ever going to be addressed. I think the Nats are going to have a far, far better chance of advocating for people in rural areas going alone. I think they have to concede too much when, yeah, very strange bedfellows indeed. Yeah, I just think they have to concede too much when obviously the Libs have the balance of power in that relationship. We could say Little Proud is leaving an abusive relationship. I don't like to use that analogy lightly, but it kind of is a divorce of sorts, you know? Um, yeah, I mean they both seem kind of shaken up over it. Kind of seems to be an emotional decision. But yeah, I would just like to take back the analogy I just made about an abusive relationship. Didn't think before I spoke. I withdraw that remark. Please have it struck from the record.
Positions that we couldn't get comfort around a nuclear being part of an energy grid into the future, about the Regional Australia Future Fund, a $20 billion fund paying a $1 billion dividend every year above and beyond to change the lives of regional Australians, about employing and training some doctors.
That's it. The the issues that regional Australians face, especially with access to healthcare, um, things like that. It's really, really, really dire out in some of these communities. And yeah, I mean, good on you, mate, for actually putting your constituents first and leaving this. Yeah, Monsanto, water rights, Coles, Woolies, duopoly, 100%. And in some of these really, really isolated, especially Indigenous communities, you should see what the price of groceries are. Like, you think we're getting shafted, you think we're experiencing inflation in the cities. And I mean, we are, but poof, out there, just the logistics of getting groceries and stuff out there and they charge a surplus, do they what? It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And yeah, nutrition and healthcare and all of these things, they're in complete disarray. So I mean, yeah, I think this is going to be really, really good for regional Australians. I think it's going to be good for farmers. I think it's going to be good for agriculture. I think it's going to, yeah, in some rural communities, rent is higher than it is in the inner city, for sure. I mean, there's so many issues that regional Australia faces that don't even get a look in mainstream discourse just because it is, per capita such a small amount of people that, politicians are like, well, we don't really need to pander to this, right? Because the voting block is small enough. If, it's essentially 9 seats, what are these people gonna do? We don't really have to factor into decision makings. But if the Nats have the numbers in the crossbench and Labor needs them to pass legislation, they're yeah, they might be able to get some good policy through for the rural Australians doing it tough, because life's hard out there. It really is. We live in a very inhospitable continent, that's for sure. If it's not on fire, it's flooding, and whew, God knows.
To actually filling in some potholes, to actually giving young families the hope of childcare, what we fight for every day. That's the principal position we took that we needed to have comfort around. It's around divestiture powers for supermarkets. We've been very principled about that, about the impact it's had on farmers, but the impact it's also had on the Australian consumer, whether they be in metro or they be in rural areas. This wasn't adding any extra regulatory burden. This was simply saying there was a consequence and a deterrent if they did the wrong thing. This was simply saying the culture needed to change. And this is also about reform to the universal service obligation, to extend it to how technology has evolved, to cover those over 1,500 mobile phone towers that were built under the Coalition, because these are tools of trade that people in regional Australians need every day. In fact, their lives are at risk because we don't have the regulatory guide rail around that. And what we are saying is that what we secured in the former Coalition are policies that should remain. We don't want to have to look back and to waste energy on trying to re-prosecute the case. We should be continuing to look forward. And so I had a respectful conversation with Susan Lee this morning and sat down, made it very clear that we remain committed to having the door open, respecting the position that Susan's been put in, that she is a leader that needs to rebuild the Liberal Party. They are going on a journey of rediscovery, and this will provide them the opportunity to do that without the spectre of the National Party imposing their will, but setting clear boundaries and parameters.
Yeah, yeah, the Liberal Party really need to decide what they stand for and really have a rebuild and really think what policies they actually, what they stand for, what policies they 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 want to go into the next election with, because they didn't have any policies, and Dutton just assumed the media wouldn't ask him about what his policies were or costings or how these things were going to be possible. He just assumed, as per usual, they would just let him say whatever without any scrutiny. And boy, oh boy, did he stumble when he actually had to be accountable. It wasn't his shining moment of glory.
About what's important to us, about what we achieved as a coalition in the last 3 years. Building on that, not having to look back and to fight for things, but to actually focus on what's important. Changing the lives of people in regional Australia, young kids that are in regional Australia, and the reason I got into politics was seeing them for generations leave regional Australia to go over the Great Dividing Range and go to capital cities and never come back. I got into politics to bring them home and to keep them home. And I don't want to have to go back and fight to get what we need to make sure I give the opportunity to the people we represent. And I respect the principled position that Susan is in, and she needs to go through a process, and I want to give her that time. And we made it very clear to one another that I believe she is the leader that can help the Liberal Party reinvent itself and get it to a juncture that the Australian people want to see, a healthy opposition. And I gave her that commitment that I'll work every day with her to try and rebuild that relationship to the point where we can re-enter a coalition before the next election. But at this juncture,
I mean, good on him for having the backbone to do that. I think regional Australia has been ignored for far too long, and the health outcomes and the life expectancy for the people living out there, it's really a national shame. And yeah, I mean, you grew a pair of balls. We're proud of you, mate. Good job. I know your name is Little Proud, but you should be Big Proud. You should be Big Proud. Good for you, buddy.
We're making a principled position about not what we're prepared to give up on, but to build on what we've achieved and to move forward. So it's with great disappointment that I announced that we're not going to form part of that coalition. We'll be pragmatic and we'll work constructively with Susan and her team to make sure that we bring down the Albanese government after the next election. Kevin, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah. Thank you, David. And look, just to reiterate a couple of things of what David just said, but also to give you sort of the energy and the way these conversations have happened. As David just articulated, this is for us a principled position. A lot of our members of our party room are going to lose position and titles out of this and money, and that wasn't even a focus of the discussion for us because of the principled decisions that we had to make about this decision.
When my model goes weird like that, I'm having a sip of water, but it's funny because she opens her mouth and does the same thing I'm doing. In case you were wondering why all of a sudden I'm just going, that's me drinking. If that ever happens, I'm just wetting the whistle.
I just want to tell you too, I want to thank the party room, our party room. We've had 2 major discussions about this and conversations about this, done in a very considered way. No emotion in the sense of there was no gung-ho-ness about this, let's do this, let's do this. You know, why are we doing this? What are the principles we're talking
Yeah, regional development is such a massive part of closing the gap. Yeah, for sure. Like, isolation has a huge role to play for First Nation communities, for sure. Yeah.
about here? How does this work for the coalition going forward from today and into the future? So it was said like that. And I know too that the conversations, I've had insight into the conversations between David and Susan, and obviously all our thoughts and prayers are with Susan, also with the personal situation that she's dealing with this week. But those conversations happened in a very measured, respectful way. And I know that when David was speaking to Susan this morning after the decision, that conversation was very measured and respectful. But also, we know going forward, I'm looking this too, hopefully maybe we've all broken up in a relationship that's been important to us, and very often, more often than not, you get back together and you join back together with more clarity and more focus about what the relationship was about, what went wrong with it, about why you broke up, and when you get back together, how it's going to work even better. And that's how I'm viewing this. I think it's really important for the coalition that happened. We are always best as a country with a strong coalition. I hope, my wish in the future is that it's going to happen again, sooner rather than later, but we needed to make, for us, a principled stand on things today that we could not move on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we're very proud of who we represent, where we come from, and the variety of perspectives and our unique perspective.
I know, I just didn't want anybody to come for me for accidentally using like a domestic violence, or, you know, someone could interpret it as that. That's obviously, you know, not my stance. So I was just looking for an analogy, and that was the one that I used. But yeah, it was a very unequal partnership. We'll just leave that. When I hear something like that could be misconstrued come out of my mouth, I like to correct it then and there, so nobody can, you know, nobody can say what I meant. I'll just correct it. I'm not taking the chance, even though I've only got a few viewers at the moment. You know, it's been picking up exponentially. I've been getting more and more followers, you know, just after a week. So yeah, definitely be clear, be concise, say what you mean and mean what you say. And if you accidentally misspeak, correct it straight away. As soon as you hear it come out of your mouth, go, oh, that sounded bad, or that sounded wrong, or I didn't mean to say that. Yep. Jump on it.
That we bring to this Parliament House. We welcome you to our party room, the only party room that doesn't change no matter who holds the government benches. This party room is always the National Party room. Our party room has made a decision, a very tough decision. It's not a decision they've taken lightly.
They're so sad. It's like a real breakup. I kind of feel, I don't know. I'm just too, like, sad people just make me feel too much empathy for them. I'm like, why am I feeling sorry for these people? I don't like them. Stop it. Stop making me feel sorry for you. Although I do feel sorry for Susan losing her mum. That's actually incredibly sad. I'm sure she's incredibly stressed at, you know, being the leader of a coalition that's just splintered. Losing her mum, taking on a party that's in disarray, possibly the worst disarray it's been since its inception. It's got to be incredibly emotionally taxing and just horribly stressful. So Kelly Osborne, don't call me Kelly Osborne. I did not say anything racist. And I can't think of anything I've ever said in my life that was racist or classist all in the same breath.
We know the coalition has only been breached 3 other times in our history of our over a century as being representing the 9 million Australians that don't live in capital cities. But a reasonable request was put to a trusted partner and it was refused. Policies that we had fought for, that only a few weeks ago we fought an election on. Policies that, in the main, rural and regional Australia backed. They are obviously divestiture powers. Why, in this day and age, we think antitrust laws are so onerous, it beggars belief. If supermarkets and big box retailers misuse their market power, just like in the UK and the USA, they should be subject to divestiture. Nuclear power. Why in this day and age, as an industrial economy, we should not avail ourselves of the backyard we have of uranium, just like the UK, just like the USA, just like France, to provide.
All right, We're not interested in hearing the policy platform, love. We heard it. We heard it for the last few months. We're good. We're good on that front. And with that, I think that summarizes. I mean, Little Proud was the one that left, and he said why he left, and she's just going to harp on about how great her policies are when the Australian public overwhelmingly rejected them. So, yeah. And that is that. And talking about breakups, talking about splits, talking about schisms, if you will, I would like to talk about the right-wing American internet pundit community. There is a split. There is a rupture. There is a schism between the more moral Christian right and the Zionist right, I guess, with talking heads like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson condemning Israel's actions in Gaza and overall just rejecting the Israeli-American alliance and saying if Israel can't exist without America's support, then maybe that's its fate. So I have this video to watch, which is from The Hill. And it's, I believe he's a senator. He's a Republican from Kentucky. I don't know if he's a congressman or a senator. He's one of the other. I don't know. So it's an interview with Thomas Macy telling Tucker Carlson that every Republican congressman has an AIPAC handler.
Republican Representative Thomas Massey, who has voted against funding Israel 15 times, joined Tucker Carlson over the weekend. The two discussed the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, otherwise known as AIPAC. Let's watch.
Well, I have Republicans who come to me on the floor and say, I wish I could vote with you today. Yours is the right vote, but I would just take too much flack back home. And I have Republicans who come to me and say, that's wrong what AIPAC is doing to you. Let me talk to my AIPAC person. By the way, everybody but me has an AIPAC person.
What does that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC. They're probably a constituent in your district, but they are, firmly embedded in AIPAC. And
every member has something like this?
I don't know.
An Israeli supervisor to make sure you play by the rules. Yeah, not disturbing at all.
How it works on the Democrat side, but that's how it works on the Republican side.
But it's not like AIPAC is doing this for all countries. Let's listen.
It's the only country that does this, that has somebody that, like, uniformly, I guarantee there's some spreadsheet at AIPAC where the AIPAC dude is who's matched up with the congressman is there, and then all the congressman's votes on the issue. Oh, has the congressman been to Israel? They pay for trips for congressmen and their spouses to go to Israel.
Yeah, and it's one of those tours, like when you go to North Korea and you get the official tour where they give you like a very sanitized, see what's really going on here, and they basically just give you this sanitized, look how everything's works. This is 100% an accurate representation of how the country operates. It's totally not. Yeah, it's totally above board, guys. This is an accurate depiction of how our country is everywhere, especially the West Bank and especially Gaza. Nothing to see here, guys. Nothing at all.
I'm not the only Republican who hasn't taken the AIPAC trip to Israel, but I'm probably one of a dozen that hasn't taken that trip, and the other ones just haven't got around to it.
AIPAC responded on Twitter, writing, quote, "Once again, Massey lies and tropes about AIPAC. We are a United States organization of 4.5 million American members funded only by Americans. Massey's disdain for Israel and for fellow Americans will not deter us from working to strengthen our country's ties with Israel." During the interview, Massey also...
It's really interesting. Before JFK was assassinated, he was trying to make Israel lobbyists register as foreign agents, and he was trying. And currently, they're the only country that don't have to register as foreign agents when they're lobbying. It's really, really interesting. Not saying they had any involvement, but just saying those two things are correlated. I don't know. Activate your almonds and chew on that for a while.
Also revealed what former President Trump said to him after Massey opposed the coronavirus relief package in 2020. Listen.
He comes on and goes, "I'm coming at you like you've never seen. Never in your life before. Have you seen the way in which I will come at you? I'm more popular than you in Kentucky, and you know it. I'm backing your primary opponent, and you're gonna lose."
I love it how everybody's got a Trump impersonation, and I'm the only person on the planet that can't do it. I can do Eddie Vedder, I can do Cher from Clueless, I can do all these people. But the one that everybody finds so easy to do, I can't do it. I'm so ashamed. I have failed.
And I'm like, oh crap, I probably will lose.
Massey added that Trump and him have since patched things up and have a better relationship.
Well, I must begin by saying that Thomas Massey has a pretty good Donald Trump impression.
That was very good.
I do a half-hearted Trump impression sometimes on the show. It's half-hearted on purpose because it's not very good. That was quality. So let's start with the AIPAC stuff. Obviously, AIPAC had targeted Massey, had run ads in his district, had spent money to publicize his opposition to funding for Israel.
It's kind of interesting how America likes to undermine and overthrow governments, sometimes duly elected democratic governments in other countries, but Israel controls the American government. So really, like, who's pulling the strings around here? It's yeah, I mean, why? Why do they have that much power? We really have to ask the questions. I think at this juncture in time, it's we can't really ignore this question with everything that's happening in the world.
Massey won his primary challenge easily, handily. I actually think his opposition to foreign military spending, and it's not just for Israel, it's across the board, it's for Ukraine, it's for everyone. He thinks American tax dollars should be not spent at all or spent at home, is a popular position among Republican primary voters, and why he is an extremely popular figure in his district in Kentucky. Yes, so is Trump, but Massey representing the non-interventionist right, that is a position that too few Republican congressmen have embraced, even though it is actually popular among Republicans.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to have AIPAC say, you know, we represent 4.5 million people who are Americans. When you look at the polling of how people feel about the U.S. support of Israel at this point in time, when they've committed many human rights violations since October 7th, that's way more Americans. That's tens of millions of Americans that don't approve of what Israel is doing right now. And you have Congress people in lockstep willing to do what AIPAC tells them to do. Why? It's not because they have very many constituents that are in support of the United States giving Israel endless funding. It's really about, I'm going to continue to get donations from AIPAC, and it's almost at the point where...
Yeah, that, and I wonder if Mossad's got quite a few thick dossiers of blackmail material on these people too. I mean, some people speculate that's what Jeffrey Epstein was, right? He had his little sex parties and his little orgies in order to gather blackmail material for Israel. People allege, not me, not me. I would never insinuate such a thing. But some people, not me, insinuate that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were Mossad agents. Food for thought.
There are members of Congress who aren't getting very much money from AIPAC, but they're threatened by the reality that if they are not in lockstep with other members of Congress on Israel, then they'll have all of these attack ads put out against them. We saw this happen to Senator Nina Turner in Ohio. It really crushed her race to have them pour so much money into her opponent in a Democratic primary simply because she was critical of Israel.
Yeah. And similarly, Massey opposed the coronavirus funding. You know, he has a limited government conservative, a little bit of my ideology, libertarianism. Does not want to spend on massive public works programs or bailouts or foreign or defense or anything. Wants to lower the amount of government involvement in our lives and other people's lives. So that's his consistent view. And you see, Republicans like Donald Trump who will so often say, oh, the debt is out of control, we got to get spending under control, and then when they get into office, and Bush was the biggest offender of this ever,
Although we will note, and we will give credit where credit is due, Trump has seemed to have done a 180 on the Israeli-American alliance, so that's progress for sure. Yeah, but don't really know what to add at this stage.
Talking about limited government conservatism, then runs up the debt, does all the bailouts, spends, like a drunken sailor on defense, starts new wars in Afghanistan and in Iraq, a country that hadn't even attacked us. Democrats spend a lot too, but they don't ever promise to spend less. So they're just doing, exactly what they promise to do. But Republicans run on controlling spending, then never actually do it. I was seeing, a lot of people on the right arguing, Massey versus Trump. And even people, I think, I know on the right who do like Trump, they really like Massey because he's so consistent on this issue. And I think it goes to show where Trump turning on you is often a death sentence for Republicans. Like, you cannot have Trump go against you. Trump is pretty beloved in the Republican Party. But it did not affect Massey whatsoever because he is so consistent on this issue, and he speaks to...
Well, sounds like a principled man. Sounds like a very, very principled man. I'm sure he's probably down a few 100,000 or million for not taking the money and shutting his mouth and pulling the line and doing what Israel wants him to do. Principled and taking a financial hit. I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due.
Conservative grassroots opposition to so much of what is going on under the leadership of our country, even under Republican administrations.
It's interesting to see the additional factions beyond center-right and center-left.
Yeah.
Good old factioned American politics, right?
Oh
You have this
God.
guy, Thomas Massey, and he is very critical of big government. Great. Be critical of big government. The government oversteps, shouldn't have too much power. Great.
Shouldn't even exist.
You should also carry over this criticism to corporations that wield so much power that it equates to...
Anyway, I think we get the message. We don't need to hear these two having a back and forth. It's kind of tedious. I do have a video of Candace Owens discussing her stance on Israel and her change of heart on the subject. But I thought of something else, and then that thing just went out of my head. What did I think about? I know what I thought about. I know what I thought about. It came back. So here is old mate Bibi in 2002, the year before. And when I say we, I mean Australia as well as the US, invaded Iraq. Here he is in 2002. The year after 9/11. Important context. Let's hear what he has to say. And you tell me who pulls the strings. You tell me where the balance of power in the Israeli-American alliance is. Does that have sound? Can you hear that?
If you take out Saddam,
Oh, there we go.
Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. And I think that people sitting right next door.
Positive reverberations in the region. Yep. Yep. He set America up to take out all of his enemies for him. What did getting rid of Saddam Hussein and Ba'ath Party do for Iraq? You tell me. Is the world better off now that he's gone? Is it? Is there possibly some estimates say up to 1 million Iraqi civilians dead? Is that a cost? Is that a cost that... Was it worth that cost? 1 million innocent lives? I would say, fuck no. I would say, God help you if you think that's okay.
In Iran, young people, and many others will say, the time of such regimes, of such despots, is gone. There is a new age.
Yeah, the time of despots has gone, mate. Off you pop. Off you go. You fucking evil cunt.
Something new is happening.
And that is speculation on your part, or you have some evidence to that effect?
I was asked the same question in 1986. I had written a book in which I had said that the way to deal with terrorist regimes, well, with terror, was to deal with the terrorist regimes. And the way to deal with the terrorist regimes, among other things, was to apply.
By the way, no weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq. The pretense for the Iraqi invasion was deliberately fabricated. We weren't privy to this, obviously, the general public, but the people in the CIA, the people at the top, they very, 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 very well knew that Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction. This guy has been playing us all like a fiddle for decades. Absolutely evil, evil, evil human being. By the way, his name's like not Netanyahu either. He's from Poland. They all changed their surnames to try and make it sound like they're indigenous to the Palestinian area. They're not. They've all adopted these like pseudo Judean names. It's, yeah.
Apply military force against them.
The way we did in Afghanistan.
The way, for example, I want to answer your question.
Well, I guess I'm running out of time, so I quickly was trying to get there. We've done, I think, what you proposed in Afghanistan, yet I haven't seen that sort of neighborhood effect.
Well, I think there's been an enormous effect. The effect was we were told that there would be a contrary effect. First of all, people said that there would be tens of thousands of people streaming into Afghanistan, zealots who would be outraged by America's action, and this would produce a counter-reaction in the Arab world.
But I think you're not saying that when you take an action like we did in Afghanistan, we're going to see all the other countries just fold.
No, what we saw is something else. First of all, we saw everybody streaming out of Afghanistan. The second thing we saw is all the Arab countries and many Muslim countries trying to side with America, trying to make...
I am going to talk about Candace Owens next. I just thought this was an interesting video and I thought it was very topical and it just popped into my head because we will be talking about Tucker Carlson later on as well, and he's very I think I have a lot of respect for the fact that he has apologized for his stance on the Iraqi invasion, and he's since apologized for it. He was initially, after 9/11, very, very pro-war. Title still YouTube video. I'm not sure what that means, sorry.
To be okay with America. The application of power is the most important thing in winning the war on terrorism. If I had to say, what are the 3 principles of winning the war on terror? It's like, what are the 3 principles of real estate, the 3 L's, location, location, location? The 3 principles of winning the war on terror are the 3 W's, winning, winning, and winning. The more victories you amass, the easier the next victory becomes. The first victory in Afghanistan makes the second victory in Iraq that much easier. The second victory in Iraq will make the third victory that much easier too, but it may change the nature of achieving that victory.
All right, and we move on to Candace Owens talking about Israel. Obviously, initially she was the same as, she worked for the Daily Wire, who, you know, notoriously Ben Shapiro works for, very, very, very Zionist organization. She stood on principle. She was fired from that job. She couldn't handle seeing the dead Palestinian children. And I think anybody with a soul would take the same stance. So, I mean, good for her. Whether, you know, you can disagree with a lot that she says, but you have to respect her for taking that position, because it definitely isolates her from a lot of... If I update to the discussion topic... I am still kind of new to streaming, and it's a bit convoluted for me to do at the moment. I might make you a mod, actually, if I can. Let me see. Oh, it's saying I can purge or delete you. That's not what I want to do. Hyperbovian. Mod. How do I make you a mod? Follow you. I don't know how to make you a mod. I'll have to look at that later.
Interview, so I haven't seen it in its full context, and I try never to weigh in on clips because there'll be something I'm missing, and then everybody screams at me. But what I will say is this: the larger discussion that's happening right now is whether or not having survived a Holocaust gives you the permission to commit a Holocaust. And for whatever reason, people have been, what I would say, milking the Holocaust narrative in the same way that Black Americans were milking the slavery narrative, and essentially saying, like, we lived through this and we survived this, and so now nobody can say that anything we do is wrong. And that's the big issue today, is that we have so many people that will not recognize that it is totally feasible that a Jewish person, and I'm speaking here about Bibi Netanyahu, could do something as horrific as what was done to the Jews throughout World War II or throughout history.
But is that an accurate comparison?
Just give me a second, guys. Just gonna try and deal with some technical difficulties. Be back momentarily. Nope. Still couldn't work out how to make you a mod. Sorry, Super Cow. I will have to look that up after the show. We'll see how we go.
And I'll tell you why I say that. As we know, I mean, whatever Dan Bilzerian wants people to believe, 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. Another 6 million people were murdered by Hitler and the Nazis. The numbers of people being killed in Gaza are, in my view, have gone way beyond what is acceptable as a response to October the 7th. However, you're still talking about, at the moment, a death toll of under 50,000. There's no comparison in the amount of dead people compared to the Holocaust. So do you understand why?
But it is a Holocaust, what's happening.
Well, is it though?
Yes.
Because I think language is really important.
I think language is really important as well, and that's
people
why
say Holocaust, genocide,
I think what's happening is a Holocaust. The burning bodies of the children that I'm seeing every day, and we spoke about this a little bit on my show, but I have recognized that the ability to see this stuff every day has transformed my opinion. Maybe the numbers wouldn't have gotten so high if people had spoken up when it was happening at the very beginning during World War II. And so I want to use my platform to say that I believe that they are intentionally executing a Holocaust. I think Bibi Netanyahu, there's tons of evidence, and obviously the Western media is not reporting on this, but the corruption trials that are going on with Bibi Netanyahu pertaining to October 7th and him editing the transcripts and the prior knowledge that he knew is now becoming extremely pertinent. It is a question as to whether or not he allowed the attacks to take place, essentially to then be able to go in and to commit this Holocaust against the Palestinians. Now,
yeah, I mean, it's a very good pretext. It's what Alex Jones would call a false flag. It's a very good pretext to ethnically cleanse and then annex Gaza, which, if you look at the plan for Greater Israel, is what they've wanted. They've wanted to do for a while. I mean, next is going to be Jordan. You know, Jordan, a democratic country. It's
based on everything that I've looked into and stuff that I had not seen before because the Western media doesn't cover it. Bibi Netanyahu caught off camera speaking about how he had no intention of following the Abraham Accords and how he was going to get around it. He has, I believe, genocidal ambitions, and that's enough. We don't need to dispute, go backward or forward. Do I think Bibi Netanyahu has genocidal ambitions against the Palestinians? The answer is yes.
Do you think he's a war criminal?
Yes. I believe he's a war criminal, and I think that the issue is how much power he has, particularly in America, and I want to make sure that I'm just crossing, or I guess...
This is Piers Morgan, who was notably fired from, I'm not sure, some British channel, not the BBC, that's the only one that I know. I think it was ITV. He was fired from ITV for paying out Meghan Markle, and she rang the head of the channel and said, I want Piers to apologize to me on air. I don't know why I'm giving her a southern accent. She's from California. Like, I want Piers to apologize, or I'm gonna be very, very mad, and my ginger boyfriend is going to come and slap you in the face. Now it keeps on going southern. Can't help it. I need to practice my Valley Girl. Yep, I will drop the schedule. I'm gonna start probably streaming every day, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Time, Standard Eastern Time, if you're interested.
Making that clear to people across the pond. You know, in America, we have lobbying. You guys don't have lobbying here. And so this is why it might...
But yeah, that's why Piers Morgan now has his internet show, because he paid out Meghan Markle. She rang the station, and she was like, if he doesn't apologize to me on air, I mean, I don't know what the repercussions were going to be, but he refused to apologize. Then actually Sharon Osbourne, I know you called me Kelly Osbourne before, but Sharon Osbourne stuck up for him and was like, oh, I know him, he's a good guy, and like, you know, his comments about Meghan, he didn't mean anything racist, he just doesn't like her because he thinks she's a dick. I think that was like basically the lines, and they both lost their jobs. Sharon Osbourne and Piers Morgan both. She wasn't on The View. Sharon Osbourne wasn't on The View, but she was like on a similar, I don't really follow that, you know, cackling hen kind of shows. That's what my dad calls them. He's like, it just sounds like a bunch of hens cackling. But yeah, I don't really follow those, but they both lost their jobs over it. And so he started his little internet show, and this is what we're watching now. This is what happened because, I don't know, he decided to talk smack about Meghan Markle. She didn't like it. He wouldn't apologize. And I don't know why I know all this stuff. I whenever I see any gossip, I'm like, oh, what's happened? I need to know.
We do, but not to the same degree.
Yes, like AIPAC spent $100 million in our elections. And what that means is that they're able to write fellowships, they're able to pay journalists, they're able to pay people to attack and take down people who speak against their initiatives. And they are, AIPAC, I would say, is very much pro-Likud party, pro-Bibi Netanyahu. And this is why you have seen people like me being attacked in the way that they have been attacked for what I believe is just a human stance on what's happening to the Palestinians. I don't care if you had flipped it, if it had not been Israelis, if it had been, if it had been Christians doing this to Muslims, I would say the exact same thing based on the images that I've seen. But there is a ton of evidence that Bibi Netanyahu allowed October 7th to take place, including the things that we found out, because I now read Haaretz daily to
You don't actually think he knew it was going to happen?
Well, let's just talk about the facts. We don't.
It's very, very interesting because Mossad is one of the most well-equipped intelligence agencies in the world. Like, if Mossad didn't have intel on an incoming attack, then we're all screwed, because anything could happen any time with us without any country having any intelligence or any means to stop terror attacks. I do think there's a good chance that, yeah, it was a false flag. We're going to allow this to happen. So perhaps then we have a pretext for an ethnic cleansing under the pretext of, well, they took hostages and they did all this, Hamas did all this stuff. Therefore, we're just going to take out as many Palestinians as we can and we're going to annex Gaza. And I think hopefully he doesn't get away with this, but if he does, what's your money on the West Bank is next? Let's when I know how to take polls, we'll take a poll.
We don't have to speculate on that. What we do know is that they did intercept the hostage plan before it took place, right? The 250 hostages that came out in Haaretz media. We also know that Egypt gave them a warning that the attacks were going to take place. Egypt said that they were being ignored. That was a fact. I've been to Israel. Have you been to Israel? We know it's the size of New Jersey. We know that it takes 15 minutes to get from one end to the other. And we know that every 5 feet, there's a person in your face holding a gun. That attack went on for 2 hours without interruption. I find that hard to believe. And this gets to the, I guess you could say, the nucleus of the corruption trial against him, when now he's even arguing with the IDF minister who he fired, Yoav Gallant, am I saying his last name correctly? Where they're saying that some funny stuff happened on October 7th, and they are explicitly accusing him of feeding lies to the Western media. This is crucial. And this could be the undoing of everything. If we find out that he had prior knowledge, and we do know for a fact that he said that he intentionally wanted to take over Palestinian territory, you should find that clip and play it on the show, because it's very significant when he asked the reporter to turn off the camera and then he starts speaking about his plans for the Palestinians. This was years ago. I think Bibi Netanyahu is a monster, and I think the people that are still standing by him and supporting him.
And look, you can disagree with her on a lot of things, but I have to take my hat off and say, look, this is actually Christian values. This is actually pro-life. All life is sacred. All life is equal. Palestinian lives are as valuable as anybody else on this planet. And that's her Christian stance. And that's her stance as a Catholic woman. And that's what moral consistency looks like. She stood up to her employer, and she worked for the Daily Wire, a almost militantly Zionist news agency, and she stood her ground. I think that's admirable, and I take my hat off to her personally.
Him, I wouldn't want to have that on my conscience.
Let's turn to the Palestinians, who I think have been appallingly oppressed for many decades. I've made no secret of that. But what Hamas did on behalf of the Palestinian people on October the 7th was an utterly heinous terrorist attack.
Absolutely. No question about it.
So my question would be, let's go back to October the 8th. What should have been Israel's response to that, given the scale of it?
Not this. The answer is not this. Talk about a disproportionate response. And again, we're talking about Mossad, the training that Mossad has. there's just no way in my brain that I can entertain the actuality where they wouldn't have been able to locate and extract these hostages with minimal casualties. It's inconceivable to me. If you know anything about Mossad, and I've only read 1 or 2 books, they are so highly trained, and the surveillance that Israel and Gaza and the West Bank are under, I know they've got tunnels, I know they've got this, and I know they've got that. But even look at the radar that archaeologists use to find, like, you know, ruins under the ground. Come on, don't give me this shit. It's just not believable. It just doesn't ring true. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, first and foremost, there had to be a response. And we know.
Hey, video creator, we know you. For you, it's about more than getting the job done.
I'm getting an ad blocker. Sorry, everyone.
IDF is very capable of a surgical tactical response because they've done it over the years plenty of times in which they're able to take out terrorists. We just watched them execute a beeper attack and hit out Hamas terrorists. So
which I think is a very relevant point, because if they could do that to 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists, why couldn't they be as precise with Hamas?
Because they don't want to be. They want to level it because they want to take it over. And I believe, and you can see this, by the way, in the videos of the settlers dancing. I mean, why do they have settlers already ready? That does not seem strange that this quickly you already have settlers.
Annexation. It's an annexation. And if they're successful, the West Bank will be next. And if that's successful, Jordan will probably be next. I don't doubt they're going to try and, well, not trick America, because I think America knows what it's doing. They're going to try and get some shit kicking off in Jordan. A democratic country, one of 3 Islamic democratic nations.
That are going in and taking over the territory, and you're hanging, you know, children's toys.
Well, what should Israel have done, though? What would have been?
They should have just taken out the Hamas terrorists.
But how do you do that when they're embedded amongst civilians?
Listen, I'm not an IDF minister, but what I can say is, going back to that beeper attack, it seems pretty precise, and there have been many examples of them doing that.
Yeah, Trump seems to have definitely woken up to the one-sidedness of the Israeli-American alliance, and that's, you know, that's a positive thing. We will give credit where credit's due, even if we don't agree with a person 100%. We will still give them props when they do something good. But there is going to be another president after Trump, and he's probably got an AIPAC handler, and Mossad might have a dirt file. He might have gone to Epstein Island. I can't believe this is the timeline we're living in. But this is the world that we live in. Politics is dark, man. It's not a nice world.
In the past. So I just don't buy the BS of, like, you know, we actually just have to take down entire towers and buildings. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, I'm not an engineering major, but if you're telling me that there's a tunnel under everywhere, you only have to hit a tunnel at a couple of points to render it completely useless. So the idea that they had to level the entire place plus go out into refugee camps doesn't make any sense. Like I said, I think their goal, and as they do, they have all these policies, mowing the lawn, you know, where they kill a certain amount of Palestinians every year. This is genocidal. The aims here are genocidal.
Your father-in-law, very highly well-regarded man in this country, Lord Michael Farmy, said the Israeli Defense Forces were acting in a highly accountable way in an extremely complex and difficult environment. We cannot forget that they have been forced to prosecute this war. Obviously, a different interpretation of events there. Have you discussed this with him?
Yeah, I mean, I try to separate my politics from his politics because I think it's unfair in any family to say, well, what does your mom think? What does your cousin think? What does my sister think? My sister's a Democrat, you know. What I can say is I deeply respect him. He's done a tremendous amount of work. And I want to say this. I was on the Zionist side. Let's not forget this. For years, I worked for Prager University. I worked for Daily Wire. And so I was much more sympathetic to, I would say, the Zionist cause throughout my entire career. But the difference is, and I think we spoke about this on my podcast, generationally, with the access of social media, being able to see these things every day versus the person who, as you described it, as you are still, because you're kind of a combo, who hears the thud of the newspaper.
Yep, they're 100% destroying all the dwellings, you know, prepping prepping the land for their new Israeli settlements. That's 100% what they're doing. You're 100% right. Shiru Nyan Nyan. I love your name. It's so cute.
Yeah.
And reads the newspaper and believes that, or, you know, this kind of becomes or colors their worldview is very different. Social media completely transformed my perspective on what's happening in Israel and Palestine. And I'm disgusted with.
And that's another great point. Like with the advent of social media, so many people that would have just gone along with the media's pro-Zionist interpretation wouldn't. I think so many people are seeing these horrific images coming out of Gaza of dying children, and only a psychopath would look at that and, you know, not be completely destroyed and just heartbroken. You have to be a sociopath not to be okay with this. It's not okay.
With myself for not being more awake.
Okay, but that's
to
interesting because can social media also, can it wrongly skew a narrative? In other words, can it reinforce one view, which is very quickly established? I mean, I was astonished how quickly the narrative after October the 7th became anti-Israel and very pro-Palestinians stroke Hamas in many cases. I found that quite terrifying that was the case.
Yeah, the German media, they definitely have a massive chip on their shoulder for, you know, what happened in the late 30s and through to the mid 40s, if you know what I'm referring to. I'm not gonna, yeah, we all know, we all went to school. And they, you know, they are just going to self-flagellate over the Holocaust. Probably for the next 100 years. So they're always going to be Zionists. They're always going to be pro-Israel. Yeah. That's what it is. So some of my ancestry is, my ancestry is Russian and Czech. A good proportion of the first country the Nazis invaded was Czechoslovakia. One of the first places they invaded was South Moravia, where my mum was born, and a lot of her family was slaughtered. A lot of my grandfather's family died, raped and murdered. My grandfather left on foot and walked to France and joined the Foreign Legion. So my family died at the hands of Nazis. I don't constantly use it as a shield to, you know, to shove my opinion. I'm not like, well, I get to say whatever I want because, you know, a good 50% of my family was slaughtered in 1937, 1938. Sorry, the numbers evading me at the moment. Yeah, just, you know, just really manipulative tactic to use in an argument to bring up something that happened to your ancestors. Well, I mean, sometimes it depends, I guess.
Case, notwithstanding my own view about how Palestinians have been treated before that. But could it be, I mean, you're a very smart person, but you say that you were affected by social media. Social media was incredibly partisan behind the Palestinians almost immediately, to the extent where I would argue, looking back at the whole time, that I've argued persistently, well, what would be proportionate? I can't think of anything Israel could have done, given that Hamas were embedding themselves amongst civilians. I don't know how they could have attacked Hamas without being criticised, whatever they did.
They would have been criticised, but not to this degree. Everyone was expecting a response, and myself included.
Yeah, that's what I meant. And then I realised that I was just trying to demonstrate the point by using the anecdotal evidence that, like, yeah, it's not really relevant. Yeah.
We're, like you said, and we agree on this, we're way past that. So that's not even a question anymore. There had to have been a response, and you are correct that no matter what, the response would have been criticized. But now there are questions about whether or not, like I said, they allowed this attack to happen, and I think this corruption trial will tell us much more. My instincts are telling me yes, but to go back to your question about whether or not social media can color you the wrong way, for the first time ever, we were just able to see what was happening in Palestine. Before, we just had to rely on legacy media who has to...
But did you believe all you were seeing?
when I first saw it, I kind of wanted to wait. You know, I was trying to just sort through everything.
Because I'm still not sure all the stuff I see is right.
Well,
it's very
some
hard
of it,
to...
well, but I'm now getting my information because I ended up signing up for Haaretz in Israeli newspapers because they're protesting it. They're calling this an ethnic
I
cleansing.
read that stuff all the time, yeah.
If Israeli newspapers are calling this an ethnic cleansing, why do we not have people in the Western media that have the courage to call it the same? It's clearly not anti-Semitism. Why on earth would Haaretz media or a Haaretz Israeli newspaper be anti-Semitic and want to see the undoing of Jews? Again, this goes back to AIPAC and back to lobbying. But to answer your question, that piqued my curiosity, and I couldn't believe that essentially everything that I had these presets to believe about Jews, everything was existential. Again, that sort of Holocaust upbringing in my mind culturally, seeing so many Holocaust movies, I kind of had these factory settings where I instantly always wanted to see Jewish people as the victim. And it was very hard for me to...
And that's something that's permeated through our culture, right? Never again, never again, never again. But when they say never again, they mean them. They don't mean any other group. Never again for Jewish people, never again for the Israeli state. But they're perpetrating the same thing against another people, using what happened to them in World War II as a cudgel.
To kind of shed that and to...
But a lot of Jewish people were victims here too.
Correct, but what I'm saying is my factory...
So it's not wrong for them to play the victim if they're genuinely being victims.
If they're genuinely being victims, correct. But when I say my factory settings, what I mean is that the second a Jewish person got hysterical about anything, I just assumed they were telling the truth and were the victims. I'm just kind of going back and assessing my own character flaws. I got this wrong in my political career. What you should do is not have these factory settings.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to articulate, and I hope it came across. I just find this subject very emotive, so if I'm stumbling over my words, it's kind of because I'm having, trouble formulating what I want to say, just because I find it all, it's just a very upsetting topic, obviously, for, it's just... Yeah, it's just a tough thing to talk about, but it's also very important that we do talk about it.
Things and actually examine the facts, right? And so when I started to do that, what I started noticing was I wasn't even allowed to ask a question. So I'd see something and then I'd say, well, what is this? And then suddenly it was anti-Semitism. And that right there to me signals you're not telling me the truth because you shouldn't have to do that, right? Nobody is going to side.
I think that works in almost every single debate in the world right now. I see it the other way around, where you get being accused of being an Islamophobe if you dare to criticize anything on the Palestinian side, even if a lot of the stuff that's been going on is worthy of criticism.
I haven't seen that, and I say this as someone who was deeply critical of people that were Islamic throughout my entire career, because again, I jumped into politics, and there's a certain perspective that you're supposed to have in America about Zionism, and you're supposed to kind of marry yourself to it. And despite all of the things that I now kind of blush when I look back on, that I sort of had those factory settings, they never kind of just like routinely dismissed me. They just kind of were like, well, she's bought and paid for, never called me an Islamophobe, whatever it is. I just want to be fair. And I want to be fair. If something happened tomorrow and in an elite place in America and a bunch of Jews were killed and targeted, I want to stand on my platform and say what is happening to Jewish people is wrong. I'm not married to hating Jews because I think what Bibi Netanyahu is doing is wrong. It has nothing to do with the Jewish people at large. This is a foreign state. He's allowed to be criticized in the same way that I criticize Biden, in the same way that you can criticize Trump. I'm criticizing Bibi Netanyahu, and I think the ICC got it correct in pursuing an arrest against him.
Do you think Hamas...
Well, I think that's a pretty good overview of Candace Owens' views on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Yeah, she's somebody that worked for a Zionist organization, and she towed the Zionist line, and she saw dead young Palestinian children, and she couldn't reconcile that with her religion and with her morals and with her heart. So she had a change of heart. And another person who also changed his views is Tucker Carlson.
I've known him for a while. My first instinct was, wow, he just destroyed his career. Like, he's done.
I don't think Douglas Murray destroyed his career. I think he destroyed his reputation.
Sam Harris is a meditation app. I didn't even know that. So by day, he's a meditation guru, and by night, he's encouraging, like, carpet bombing of children. I mean, I spent my whole life in cable news. It, obviously is, in terminal decline. I had all kinds of views that I argued for passionately. They were totally wrong. I admitted it. I gained perspective and humility in admitting it.
Ben Shapiro built a career opposing identity politics as a proud Zionist.
Tucker Carlson and libertarian comedian Dave Smith woke up this morning, or that morning of the podcast, put their clothes on, and they chose violence. They decided to throw so many right-wingers and Sam Harris, who's not necessarily a right-winger, but a staunch Israel supporter, under the bus. Under the bus. That's all you heard throughout this whole podcast episode. And you want to know something?
And that's what happens when you have a moral stance. If something contradicts your morals, then you have to reject that thing vehemently. Like that's how it works, typically.
I welcome it. I will allow it. It was amazing. Now look, there's this rift within the right wing of this country. And that rift really has to do with the old school neoconservative Republican flavor, right? The Bush era Republican types who probably hold their noses and say supportive things about Trump, even though they absolutely despise him. And then there's the anti-neocon, anti-war, version of the Republican Party, or it's within the Republican base. And I think it's best represented by some of the comments that you're gonna hear from Dave Smith, who does call himself a right-winger, and Tucker Carlson. So at the center of this,
I might just skip to those comments because this is just commentary around the conversation that they were having.
This is from a guy called Sam Harris.
I'm loosely familiar.
Sam Harris, wow, he doesn't care for you at all, or it looks like me either, but whatever, I'll ignore the stuff about me. I'm not even exactly sure who Sam Harris is, but a sad atheist guy. Sam Harris is a meditation app. I didn't even know that. So by day, he's a meditation guru, and by night, he's encouraging like carpet bombing of children.
I mean,
yep, very, very zen. Carpet bombing children, very, very zen. Breathe in, boom, genocide.
When he's right, and Tucker Carlson was right. I mean, Sam Harris, after that disastrous Douglas Murray debacle on Rogan, decided, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna defend my buddy, Douglas Murray.
I couldn't find the actual condensed clip of Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson talking. I could only find the 2-hour episode. Although I know there are clips, I just, for the life of me, could not locate them. So
we're on the same team, but I feel like he's using cheat codes. We have the
I am getting the ad blocker, I promise.
And the same deadlines.
Carlson, take a look.
Ben Shapiro built a career opposing identity politics as a proud Zionist.
Or how about the only question that matters is whether or not something is true?
Yeah.
And another way to put it, a phrase that I've coined and made copyright is facts don't care about your feelings.
That's a good one.
You like that?
Someone should really run with that.
I like that.
That's a good.
You could get a long way. You could get a special deal with Facebook on the basis of that. But I actually agree. I agree with that.
If you accuse Ben Shapiro of having dual loyalty, they go, "Oh, that's an anti-Semitic trope. That means you hate the Jews." But then he'll sit there in his own words and say, I forget his exact quote, but it was something like, "My favorite thing about the United States of America is that it protects Israel." And so you're already saying you have loyalty to both of these countries. In fact, I'm not so sure about the...
Yeah, you can't serve two masters. And yeah, Tucker Carlson, again, is somebody who's, I think, a born-again Christian. I think is kind of new to it. I think it was kind of culturally Christian before, but he's, somebody that was a war correspondent during the Iraqi invasion, and he was very, very, very pro-war. He was very like, America, fuck yeah, coming again to save the motherfucking day, yeah. And he's since, changed his mind. And if you're going to be pro-life, you have to be anti-war and you have to be anti-interventionist. And he's apologized for, supporting the Iraqi invasion and the subsequent war on the pronoun terror. Yeah, and I mean, we can disagree with people, but when somebody says something good or somebody does something good, I think we should also applaud that. It helps bridge the divide, and yeah, I don't know what more to add. I did have some things that I wanted to discuss, some plans for the channel, and I just wanted to see what chat thought about it. So I've got an idea for the Friday night stream, which seems to be peak hour around these parts. So I was gonna have America Fuck Yeah Fridays, where we discuss American imperialism and foreign policy, American foreign policy, specifically, hence the name of the show. I wanted to, for our first America Fuck Yeah episode this Friday, I wanted to look at an interview with Christopher Boyce, who was an American who was imprisoned for letting Australia know that we were getting stabbed in the back. So one of our most famous journalists, Ray Martin, interviewed him on that. And Christopher Boyce is the reason why we know that the CIA were instrumental in the dismissal of the Gough Whitlam government. Australia's most left-wing Prime Minister, who introduced universal healthcare, who introduced free university, who, had the plan to buy back the farm, to get all the resources nationalised and back in their hands and the profits back in the hands of Australians. America had him ousted, and he saw this and he spoke up, and I think he might still be in jail. I think apparently he did escape, though. That's in the interview. This guy is a genius, an absolute genius, and a hero. We support you, Christopher Boyd. But yeah, I think that will be my first episode of America Fuck Yeah. If people think that's something that they might be interested in, I just want to see. Yeah, I just want to see if people like that trajectory. Obviously, this is my second week streaming, so I'm still, getting in the groove, learning to just let my words flow, just getting in the rhythm of it. But I think I've been getting better, so yeah. It's been a learning experience for sure. And I also if anybody in the chat is familiar with the investigative journalist John Pilger, he's famous for documentaries such as America's War on Democracy, Australia, the Secret Country, many, many, many amazing documentaries and books. I recommend his book.